I stood there, in front of the bathroom mirror in my new country home, wiping away tears of happiness that had streamed down my wrinkled cheeks. At 69 years old, after 45 years of marriage and 2 years mourning my husband's death, I had finally done something just for myself. This small house, with its garden full of possibilities and windows overlooking the fields, was mine. Completely mine. I had spent my life savings, $5,000 that I had saved penny by penny, denying myself small pleasures for decades, but it was worth it. For the first time in my life, I had a place no one could take from me, a sanctuary where I could plant my flowers, read my books, and simply exist in peace. I touched the freshly painted cream-colored wall, inhaled the scent of new wood, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pure freedom. This morning, I had breakfast in my small kitchen while listening to the birds sing. I had watered the potted plants I bought in town and planned where I would put my favorite rocking chair. Everything was perfect. Everything was mine. The phone rang as I was organizing my few belongings in the master bedroom closet. I saw my daughter Rebecca's name on the screen and smiled, thinking she might want to congratulate me on my new house, although I knew she had been against this purchase from the beginning. "Mom, it's a waste of money," she had told me over and over. "You should stay in your apartment, close to us." Close to us, not with me. Close, so I would be available when they needed me. "Hello, my darling daughter," I answered, with that maternal joy that never fades, no matter how many times you've been disappointed. "Mom, get ready. In an hour, I'll be there with 20 people from David's family," she said, without even a greeting, in that authoritative voice she had developed since she got married. "Make food for everyone and get our rooms ready. We're only staying for 2 weeks." The world stopped. I literally felt as if the floor moved beneath my feet. My heart began to pound so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. 20 people? "Rebecca, I just arrived. I have nothing prepared. I don't even have food for them." "Mom, don't be dramatic. It's your family now. You have to welcome them properly. David says his cousin Emily is coming with her 4 small children, his brother Noah with his wife and twin kids, and Aunts Carol and Beth are coming with their families too. It's vacation time, and they need a free place to stay. Your house is perfect." "But Rebecca, I don't have space for so many people. This is a small 2-bedroom house, and besides, there are no buts. We are your family. You have an obligation to help us. Besides, why did you buy such a big house if it's not for us to use?" "Don't be selfish, Mom. We're on our way, so hurry up and get everything ready. Oh, and make sure there are enough clean towels for everyone. The kids will want to swim in the lake, so also prepare some food for the ride back. See you." She hung up, just like that. I stood there, holding the trembling phone, feeling all the happiness I had felt just minutes ago vanish like smoke. 20 people in my new house without warning, without asking if I could, if I wanted to, if I had the means to accommodate them. And worst of all, talking about my house as if it were a free family hotel. I looked around my small, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Where would 20 people sleep on the floor, in my living room that barely had a small sofa? My refrigerator was practically empty. I barely had a few eggs, some milk, and a few tomatoes I had bought in town. How was I going to feed 20 people with that? With what money was I going to buy food for 2 weeks for so many people? But what hurt me most wasn't the impossible logistics of the situation. What broke my heart was realizing that once again, my opinion didn't matter. My daughter had decided for me. She had disposed of my house, my time, my money, as if I were her employee and not her mother. As if this house, which I had bought with the sweat of my brow and my life savings, were a free hotel for her husband's family. I sat on the edge of my new bed, the one I had chosen so carefully, thinking of the quiet mornings I would spend there reading, and began to feel that familiar hollow sensation in my stomach. It was the same one I felt every time Rebecca and her husband showed up at my old apartment. They would eat whatever was in my refrigerator, use my washing machine, watch my television, and leave everything dirty and messy, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I vividly remembered the day after my husband's funeral, when I needed emotional support the most. Rebecca had shown up with empty boxes and a fake smile. "Mom, you have too many things. You need to get rid of all this," she had told me while packing my late husband's books without asking. "We're taking these. You don't need them. At your age, you don't read as much." And I, in my grief and confusion, had let her take half of my memories, including the gold watch that had belonged to my father-in-law. When I sold the apartment to buy this house, she had insisted I give her the money to invest it better. "Mom, you don't understand finances. I know how to make that money grow," she had told me with that condescending smile I hated so much. When I refused, she didn't speak to me for a whole month. And now on my first day in my new house, she was already claiming her right to use it as if it were hers. Tears began to stream down my cheeks as I looked out the window at the garden I had dreamed of tending. In an hour, all this silence, this peace, this feeling of freedom would turn into chaos. I remained seated on my bed for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The silence of my new house, which moments ago had seemed so beautiful and tranquil, now felt heavy and threatening. In less than an hour, this refuge I had built with so much sacrifice would become a place of chaos and demands. I slowly got up, feeling the weight of my 69 years more than ever. My legs trembled slightly as I walked to the kitchen, where I opened the refrigerator with a mix of hope and despair. The reality was even worse than I remembered. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, a piece of cheese I had bought yesterday, and a bottle of water. That was it. Absolutely everything I had to feed 20 people. I opened the cabinets with trembling hands. 1 can of beans, another of tuna, a half-finished bag of rice, salt, pepper, and oil. I didn't even have enough plates. I had bought a set for 4 people, thinking it would be more than enough for my needs. I never imagined my daughter would turn my home into a family refugee camp. I looked at the clock. 50 minutes. 50 minutes to work a miracle. I grabbed my purse and car keys, knowing I would have to go to town to buy food, but when I checked my wallet, my heart sank even further. After paying for the house, basic furniture, and moving expenses, I only had $300 left until next month. How was I going to buy food for 20 people for 2 weeks with that? The drive to town felt endless. Every minute that passed was a minute less to prepare whatever I could prepare. In the small-town supermarket, I ran through the aisles like a desperate woman, mentally calculating every dollar I spent. Rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, some cheap vegetables, bread. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just basic food that could stretch for many people. The final bill, $240, almost everything I had left. When I returned home, I only had 20 minutes. 20 minutes to transform my small kitchen into a restaurant capable of feeding an army. I put water on to boil for the rice and pasta. I opened cans like a woman possessed. I chopped vegetables with tears streaming down my cheeks. They weren't onion tears. They were tears of rage, helplessness, and profound sadness for what was happening. As I cooked, I couldn't stop thinking about how I had reached this point. After my husband's death, I had tried to be the perfect mother, the understanding mother-in-law, the available grandmother. When Rebecca needed a babysitter, there I was. When she needed to borrow money, there I was. When she wanted to use my car because hers was in the shop, there I was. Always available, always willing, always saying yes. I remembered the time David, my son-in-law, had shown up at my old apartment with 3 friends without warning, expecting me to cook and provide drinks for them all weekend for a football game. "My mom's out of town and you cook so well," he had told me with that fake smile that annoyed me so much. And I, as always, had rushed to the supermarket, spent my money, and cooked for them as if I were their personal chef. Or the time Rebecca had asked me to take care of her sister-in-law's children because she had a family emergency. 3 small children for a whole week without paying me a cent, without even asking if I could do it. When I mentioned I had to cancel my doctor's appointments to take care of them, she had said, "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. Besides, it's good for you to have something to do so you don't feel so lonely." Lonely. That word echoed in my head as I stirred the tomato sauce. I felt lonelier surrounded by my family than when I was truly alone. Because true solitude is honest. It doesn't pretend to love you while it uses you. The sound of cars approaching pulled me from my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw 3 vehicles full of people getting out, as if they were arriving at an all-inclusive resort. Children screaming, adults laughing, suitcases being pulled from trunks. And there was Rebecca, directing the show as the official hostess of my house. "Mom!" she shouted from outside. "Come help us with the bags!" I stood there in my kitchen, holding the wooden spoon I had been stirring the sauce with, and something inside me broke. Not in the dramatic way you see in movies, but in a silent and definitive way, like when the thinnest thread holding too heavy a weight snaps. I walked out of the kitchen and opened the front door. What I saw took my breath away. 20 people, indeed, from babies to elderly adults, all getting out of the cars as if they were arriving at their favorite vacation home. Some already had swimsuits on, others carried coolers full of beer, and all, absolutely all of them, looked at me with that expectant smile of someone who knows they will be treated like royalty. "Aunt Mary!" shouted Emily, David's cousin carrying a crying baby. "What a beautiful house! The kids are going to be so happy here. I hope you made a lot of food because we're hungry from the trip." Noah, David's brother, approached, patting me on the back as if we were old friends. "Mother-in-law, this is perfect for vacation. Is the food ready? The kids haven't had lunch." Of course, they hadn't had lunch because they knew Grandma Mary would be there to fix everything. As always, like the reliable employee who never says no. "Mom," Rebecca said, approaching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I hope you prepared the rooms. Emily and her family will need the master bedroom because the baby cries a lot at night and we can sleep in the other one. The rest can settle in the living room." The master bedroom, my bedroom. The room where I had put my things just a few hours ago, where I had imagined waking up every morning looking at the garden through the window. Without asking me, without consulting me, they had already decided I would sleep on the sofa in my own house. I looked at all these people invading my space, touching my things, talking about my house as if it were theirs, and for the first time in many years, I felt something different from resignation. I felt a small but real spark of something I had forgotten existed, indignation, but I still didn't know what to do with it. "Mom, the food!" Rebecca yelled from the door, as if I were a waitress who had taken too long to take the order. "The kids are hungry, and the adults want to have lunch too before we settle in." I returned to the kitchen like a zombie, feeling the eyes of 20 people fixed on my back. On the stove, the rice had stuck a little to the bottom of the pot. The pasta was almost overcooked, and the tomato sauce looked thinner than I would have liked. But it was what I had. It was what I had managed to make with the little time and money I had. I started serving on the few plates I had, knowing they wouldn't be enough. Indeed, after serving 8 plates, I ran out of dishes. I had to improvise with cups, bowls, and even use the lid of a pot as a plate for one of the smaller children. The humiliation was complete. "Is this all?" Noah asked, looking at his plate with the small portion of rice and sauce I had managed to serve him. "I thought there would be meat or chicken. You don't have anything else?" "It's just that you arrived very suddenly, and I didn't have time to—" I began to explain, but David interrupted me. "Mary, it's okay. We understand you didn't expect so many people, but you could have made an effort. We're family, aren't we? Besides, this house is beautiful. You surely have money saved to buy better things." Money saved. If they knew I had just spent almost everything I had left on that meal they were criticizing, maybe not. They would probably still be criticizing. David's family had that special ability to make you feel guilty no matter the circumstances. "Grandma," one of Noah's twins said, a boy about 8 years old, "do you have video games like at my other grandparents' house?" "No, my love, there are no video games here," I replied with the sweetest voice I could, trying not to unleash my frustration on an innocent child. "And cable TV and Wi-Fi?" he continued asking. "Not yet, darling. I just moved in and haven't set up those services yet." The child looked at me as if I had told him I lived in a cave. "So what are we going to do for 2 weeks? This is boring." Emily, while changing her baby's diaper on my dining room table, joined the conversation. "Mary, we need you to go to town to buy diapers, formula, and baby food. I forgot to bring enough for 2 weeks. We also need sunscreen, mosquito repellent, and a few other things." She handed me a handwritten list on a napkin. "Here's everything written down. You can go this afternoon." I took the list with trembling hands. Diapers, formula, sunscreen, repellent, sanitary napkins, headache medicine, aspirin, antacid, children's shampoo, antibacterial soap, laundry detergent. The list seemed endless. I mentally calculated at least $200 more. The last $200 I had left. "Emily," I said, trying to stay calm, "I don't have much money available right now. I just bought the house, and—" "Oh, Mary," she interrupted, laughing. "Don't be dramatic. They're just basic things. It won't break you. Besides, it's for your family. I'm sure you have something saved for emergencies." Emergencies. They were my emergency, but not the kind I had planned for. Paul, one of David's uncles, approached with a beer in his hand. A beer he had taken from his own cooler. Luckily, because I didn't even have drinks. "Mary, where can we put our things? We need space in the refrigerator for our beers and food." I opened my small refrigerator, which was already full with the few things I had bought that morning. "Well, you can move my things, and—" "Perfect," he said, already starting to take my things out of the refrigerator to put his own in. "And where is the room where Robert and I are going to sleep? You only have 2 rooms, and Rebecca said that—" "Oh, don't worry. We can sleep in the living room. Just make sure you have enough blankets and pillows. It gets cold at night here in the country." Blankets and pillows for 20 people. I had exactly 3 blankets and 4 pillows in the entire house, my house, which was becoming a charity hotel. Meanwhile, the children had discovered my garden and were running among the potted plants I had bought so lovingly that morning. I watched as one of them stomped on my small tomato plants that I had planted just hours before, full of hope and excitement. "Children, be careful!" I shouted from the window. "Oh, leave them alone," Noah shouted back. "They're kids. They need to run and play. That's why we came to the country, so they could be free. Free in my garden, destroying my plants, with my money paying for their meals, while I became the hotel employee for all these people." Rebecca approached me as I washed dishes in the small kitchen sink. "Mom, I need to talk to you. David's family is very excited to be here, but I think you could try a little harder to make them feel welcome." I turned to look at her, my hands dripping soapy water. "Try harder?" "Yes, Mom. The food was basic, and the house feels a little cold, as if you don't want us here. Remember, this is an opportunity for you to get to know your son-in-law's family better. You should be grateful they want to spend time with you." Grateful. That word resonated in my head like a slap. Grateful that 20 people invaded my house without permission, spent my money, criticized my food, destroyed my garden, and treated me like their personal employee. "Besides," Rebecca continued, "I hope you don't plan on charging them anything to stay here. That would be very stingy of you." Charge them. The idea hadn't even occurred to me, but now that she mentioned it, why not? If it were any other place, they would be paying at least $100 per night per room. 20 people, 2 weeks. That would be thousands of dollars. But I said nothing. Not yet. I just nodded and continued washing dishes, feeling that small spark of indignation I had felt before slowly begin to grow in my chest. That night, while 20 people slept comfortably in my house, I stayed awake on the small sofa in the living room, listening to the snores coming from everywhere, staring at the ceiling, and wondering when exactly I had lost control of my own life. The answer came to me in the darkness. I had lost it little by little. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I put others' needs before my own. Every time I let them treat me as if my time, my money, and my space had no value. But for the first time in a long time, I also realized something else. It was still time to regain that control. I woke up at 5 in the morning with terrible back pain from sleeping on the sofa. The silence of the dawn lasted exactly 30 seconds before chaos began. Emily's baby started crying, waking up all the other children, who immediately began running through the house, screaming and playing as if it were an amusement park. I got up from the sofa, feeling every one of my 69 years in my joints, and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed caffeine to survive what was coming. But when I arrived, I found Noah already there, rummaging through my refrigerator as if it were his own. "Good morning, Mary," he said without looking up. "Where's the coffee? And we need milk for the kids' cereal." "I don't have cereal," I replied, trying to keep a neutral tone. "What do you mean you don't have cereal? What are the kids going to eat for breakfast then?" It was an honest question, and I didn't have an honest answer. I didn't have cereal, I didn't have enough milk, I didn't have enough of anything to feed 20 people for 2 weeks. My small pantry was designed for one person who ate simply and economically. "Can I make scrambled eggs?" I offered, knowing I had exactly 6 eggs left after the ones I had used yesterday. "6 eggs for 20 people?" Noah asked, laughing. "We'd better go to town to buy real food, but make it quick because the kids will be hungry soon. Let's go." As if it were a joint decision, as if the money belonged to both of us, as if I hadn't just spent my last savings yesterday on a meal they had criticized. Emily appeared in the kitchen with the baby in her arms and a sour face. "Mary, I need you to boil water for the bottle, and I also need you to wash these clothes because the baby soiled himself last night." She handed me a bag full of dirty clothes that smelled terrible. "Didn't you bring enough clothes for the baby?" I asked. "Yes, but I didn't think he would get so dirty. Besides, you have a washing machine here. Isn't it easier to wash here than to carry so much laundry?" Easier for her, more work for me, more expense for water, electricity, and detergent for me. The children began to arrive in the kitchen like a hungry wolf pack, 5 children between the ages of 4 and 12, all asking what was for breakfast, all expecting the magical grandma to produce food out of thin air. "Grandma, I'm hungry," the youngest girl said, with such an innocent face that it broke my heart. It wasn't her fault to be in this situation. "I know, my love. Let's see what we can do," I replied, opening empty cabinets and trying to work miracles. Robert appeared, yawning and scratching his stomach. "Mary, do you have coffee and not that instant stuff? I hope for something decent." Decent coffee? I had just gotten up from my own sofa after being kicked out of my own bed, and he was asking for gourmet coffee. "I only have instant coffee," I told him. "Seriously? Well, I guess we'll have to go to town to buy real coffee too, and since we're going, we can buy everything we need for these days." "We?" Again, that word, as if we were partners in this disaster. Rebecca came downstairs from my room, where she had slept comfortably in my bed, looking perfectly rested. "Good morning, Mom. Is breakfast ready? David is hungry and doesn't like to wait." "Rebecca, I don't have enough food for—" "Mom, we already talked about this yesterday. You need to get more organized. We are 20 people. You can't improvise. Why don't you make a proper shopping list and go to town? We can stay here, taking care of the house." Taking care of my house, while I spent my money buying food for them. David appeared behind Rebecca with that fake smile I also knew. "Mother-in-law, good morning. I heard you're going to town. Can you bring cigarettes and beer? The ones we brought won't last 2 weeks. We also need charcoal for a barbecue tomorrow." Cigarettes, beer, charcoal. The list of expenses kept growing, and my wallet kept shrinking. "David, I don't smoke and I don't drink. I don't know what brands." "Don't worry. Any brand is fine. The important thing is that we have enough to have a good time." Having a good time with my money in my house, while I worked as their personal employee. Paul joined the group in the kitchen. "Mary, last night I talked to Robert, and we thought it would be a good idea to have a big barbecue for the whole family. We can invite more relatives who live nearby. What do you think about organizing something for the weekend?" "More relatives?" I asked, feeling my blood pressure rise. "Yes, we are a big, close-knit family. It will be fun. We just need you to buy meat for about 30 people. Nothing out of this world." 30 people. Meat for 30 people. I mentally calculated at least $500 more. Money I definitely didn't have. "I don't think I can afford—" "Oh, Mary," Emily interrupted. "Don't be stingy. It's a family gathering. Besides, with what you're saving by not paying for a hotel for all of us, you can surely afford a barbecue." Not paying for a hotel as if being in my house was free, as if my time, my space, my peace of mind were worth nothing. The children, meanwhile, had found my few boxes of crackers and were eating them directly from the package, scattering crumbs all over my freshly cleaned kitchen. "Children, don't eat that," I shouted. "What are those crackers for, Mom?" Rebecca asked in an annoyed tone. "They're just crackers. The kids are hungry and you haven't prepared anything for breakfast. At least let them eat something." Something. My crackers, my food, my last food reserve in the house. "Mom," Rebecca continued, "I think you're being a little selfish. This is a beautiful opportunity for family bonding, and you're just complaining about small things like crackers and money. Aren't you happy to see us happy?" Happy. They were happy spending my money, sleeping in my house, eating my food, and treating me like their employee. Of course they were happy. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by 20 people who looked at me as if I were the villain of the story for not having enough food to feed them for free for 2 weeks. And something inside me finally clicked. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was more like when a puzzle piece that had been out of place for years finally fits. Suddenly, I could see the complete picture with a clarity that surprised me. These people didn't love me. They needed me. There was a huge difference between those two things, and I had spent years confusing them. "It's okay," I told them with a calm that surprised even myself. "I'll go to town to buy what you need." Everyone smiled, satisfied that they had won another battle against the obliging grandma. But as I took my purse and car keys, I wasn't thinking about food or shopping lists. I was thinking about something completely different. I was thinking about the lawyer's office I had seen in town yesterday and a conversation that perhaps it was time to have. For the first time in days, I left my house with a real smile on my lips. The trip to town that morning was the most liberating I had had in years. For the first time since my family arrived, I was alone with my thoughts, with no one demanding anything from me, no children screaming, no adults treating me like a housekeeper. The silence of the car felt like a balm to my wounded soul, but I didn't go directly to the supermarket as they expected. Instead, I parked in front of a small cafe I had seen the day before and sat down to have a real cup of coffee while organizing my thoughts. I needed time to process what I had understood that morning. "Are you all right, ma'am?" the waitress asked me, a middle-aged woman with a kind face. "You look a little troubled." I smiled sadly. "Let's say I'm going through a complicated family situation." "Ah," she said, nodding knowingly. "Family. Sometimes they're the ones who hurt us the most, aren't they?" Her words hit me like lightning. That was exactly it. My own family was the one hurting me the most, and I had been so used to the pain that I had started to think it was normal. After coffee, I walked through the small town until I found what I was looking for. Jeremy Stone, attorney at law. The sign was simple but professional. I took a deep breath and entered. "Good morning," said a man about 50 years old with a kind face. "How can I help you?" "I need legal advice on family situations," I told him, feeling a little ridiculous, but determined to continue. Jeremy invited me to sit down and offered me water. For the next hour, I told him everything. From Rebecca's call to the invasion of my house, from the expenses they were forcing me to incur to the complete lack of respect for my property and my money. The man listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. "Mrs. Albright," he finally said, "what you are describing to me is financial and emotional abuse. The fact that they are family does not give them the right to use your property without permission or to force you to spend your money on them." "But they are my family," I murmured, repeating the excuse I had used for years. "True family respects, it doesn't exploit," he replied firmly. "Have you ever thought about setting legal boundaries?" Legal boundaries. The idea seemed as strange as it was liberating. "What kind of boundaries?" I asked. "Well, for example, your house is your private property. You have the absolute right to decide who can be there and under what conditions. If someone refuses to leave when you ask them to, they are technically trespassing. Trespassing my own family. Also, Jeremy continued, if so many people are using your property as a place of lodging, legally you could charge them for the services you are providing: food, lodging, basic utilities. In any hotel, they would pay hundreds of dollars for what you are giving them for free. Could I really charge them? I asked, feeling a mix of hope and terror. Of course. It's your house. They are your resources. If they decided to come uninvited and without contributing financially, you have every right to establish commercial terms for their stay. I left Jeremy's office with a folder full of documents and a new perspective on my situation. I had drafted a formal letter establishing commercial lodging terms for my property with rates per room, per meal, and per service. I also had information about my rights as a homeowner and the legal steps I could take if someone refused to respect my decisions. My next stop was the bank. I wanted to know exactly how much money I had left and how much I had spent in the last 2 days. The numbers were alarming. In less than 48 hours, I had spent $520 of my meager savings. At that rate, I would be completely bankrupt in a week. The bank manager, a young man named Richard, reviewed my account with a concerned expression. Mrs. Albright, these expenses are very high for your usual income. Is everything okay? He asked me. I briefly explained the situation, and he nodded with understanding. Look, it's none of my business, but I've seen similar cases. Elderly people who allow themselves to be financially exploited by relatives. Have you considered setting limits on your spending? I'm starting to consider it, I replied. If you need help controlling your expenses or setting a budget that protects you from unintentional overspending, we can help you. We can also configure your account to require special authorization for expenses over a certain amount. It was another tool I didn't know existed. Another way to protect myself from my own misguided generosity. Finally, I went to the supermarket, but this time I only bought the basics: rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, some cheap vegetables. No luxuries, no meat for barbecues, no beers or cigarettes. I spent exactly $50. When I returned home 3 hours later, I was greeted by a chorus of complaints. "Mom, you took forever," Rebecca shouted. "The kids are starving and so are we." "Where's the meat for the barbecue?" Paul asked. "And the beer?" David added. "The cigarettes," Robert insisted. I looked at them all standing in my living room, in my house, expecting me to solve all their problems with my money. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. "I brought basic food," I told them calmly. "Rice, beans, pasta, enough so no one starves." "But what about everything we asked for?" Emily insisted. "I didn't buy it," I replied simply. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 people looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "What do you mean you didn't buy it?" Noah asked incredulously. "I don't have money to buy meat for 30 people, or beer, or cigarettes, or all the other things you asked for. I only have money for basic food." "But Mom," Rebecca intervened with that condescending voice I hated so much, "we know you have money saved. Don't be stingy." I took out the papers I had obtained from the bank and showed them. "These are my bank statements. In 2 days, I've spent $520 of my savings. I have less than $300 left until next month. There's no saved money, no secret reserves. This is all I have." The papers passed from hand to hand like evidence in a trial. The faces of disbelief slowly transformed into faces of annoyance. "Well, then we'll have to find alternatives," David said finally. "We can all contribute to the expenses." "Excellent idea," I replied, pulling the other folder from my bag. "In fact, I went to see a lawyer this morning and prepared a document that establishes commercial rates for lodging on my property." The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of people who had just realized that their victim was no longer a victim. "It's $100 per room per night, $50 per person per day for meals, and $20 per day for basic services like water, electricity, and laundry," I continued, reading the document. So far, in 2 days, the total would be $2,800. I could have heard a pin drop. "You're charging us to stay in your house?" Rebecca asked in a shrill voice. "No," I replied with as much calm as I could. "I am offering you the option of paying for the services you are receiving or finding lodging elsewhere." For the first time in years, I was in control of the conversation. The explosion that followed was epic. 20 people talking at the same time, shouting, protesting, trying to make me feel guilty with all the manipulation tactics they had perfected over the years. But something had changed in me. It was as if I had built an invisible wall that didn't let their hurtful words pass through. "This is ridiculous," David shouted. "We're family. You can't charge us to stay in your house." "Since when are you so greedy, Mom?" Rebecca added with crocodile tears in her eyes. "Dad would be rolling in his grave if he knew you were charging his own family." Mentioning my late husband was the last straw, but not in the way she expected. Instead of breaking me, it gave me strength. "Your father," I told her in a firm voice, "worked his whole life so I would have financial security. He would never have allowed his family to treat me like a housekeeper in my own home." "We're not treating you like an employee," Emily protested. "We're giving you the opportunity to spend time with your family." "Spend time?" I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Emily, since you arrived, you've made me wash your baby's clothes, boil water for his bottles, and demanded that I buy diapers and formula with my money. Is that spending time?" "But we're family," she insisted. "That's what family does, right?" I replied with a clarity that surprised even myself. "What family does is respect each other, contribute equally, and not abuse each other's generosity. What you are doing is exploitation." Noah approached with a menacing look. "Mary, I think you're going crazy. Maybe you need medical help. This isn't you." "You're right," I replied unfazed. "This wasn't me before." The old Mary let herself be walked all over, spent her savings on people who treated her badly, and confused being used with being loved. But that Mary no longer exists. "Mom, this is embarrassing," Rebecca shouted. "What will people think when they find out you charged your own family for lodging?" The same people who would think badly of you for showing up uninvited at a 69-year-old woman's house and expecting her to support you for free for 2 weeks, I replied. Paul tried a different approach. "Mary, let's be reasonable. We understand you have expenses, but these rates are exaggerated. We can give you something symbolic, $50 for the entire stay." $50? I repeated slowly. "For 20 people for 2 weeks, that's less than 18 cents per person per day. Do you know how much you paid for gas to get here? Probably more than $50 per car, but that's different," Robert protested. "Different? Why? Because your money is worth more than mine? Because your expenses are important, but mine aren't?" The living room filled with murmurs and long faces. I could see them looking at each other, trying to decide what strategy to use now. It was then that my salvation appeared in the form of a woman about 60 years old with a basket of vegetables in her hands. It was Martha, my neighbor, who had come to welcome me to the neighborhood. "Good morning," she said from the open door. "I'm Martha. I live next door. I came to meet my new neighbor, and oh, excuse me, I see you have visitors." "Come in, please," I said, grateful for the interruption. "They're relatives who came to visit." Martha entered and immediately sensed the tension in the atmosphere. She was one of those older women who have seen so much of life that they can read a situation in seconds. "What a big family," she commented with a smile, but her intelligent eyes were already analyzing the scene. "It must be expensive to maintain so many people. I hope they are contributing to the expenses." The awkward silence that followed was eloquent. "They're not contributing?" Martha asked with genuine surprise. "Oh, what a shame. In my day, when you visited someone, you always brought something, or helped with the expenses, especially if there were so many people." "But we're family," Rebecca murmured. "Ah, all the more reason," Martha replied energetically. "Family is the one who should take care of their own the most. You know what? My daughter lives in the city, and every time she comes with her grandchildren, she always brings the complete groceries. She says it's not fair for me to spend my pension feeding her whole family. I could see how Martha's words were having an effect. It was one thing for me to tell them they were abusing me, but it was quite another for a stranger to confirm it. "And where are you all from?" Martha continued asking with innocent curiosity. "From the city," David replied curtly. The trip must have been expensive. Gas, food on the way, and then arriving and finding everything paid for. How lucky! Although I suppose you all organized yourselves to help Mary with the expenses for so many people." Every word from Martha was like a needle pricking my family's conscience, or at least pricking their pride at being exposed to a stranger. "Martha," I said, "would you like to have some coffee? I'd love to get to know you better." "Of course, but don't worry about waiting on me. I see you already have your hands full with so many people." As I prepared coffee for Martha in the kitchen, she followed me. "Honey," she whispered, "I don't know if it's my place to say this, but those people don't look like they're here out of affection. They look like they're here for convenience." Her words were like a balm. Someone else saw what I had been seeing, but had been denying for years. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Darling, I've been in this world for 60 years. I've seen everything. Those people arrived expecting to be treated like kings, and you look like someone who hasn't slept well and is spending money she doesn't have." I broke down a little. "But they're my family." "True family doesn't abuse, my dear. True family takes care of their elders. They don't exploit them." Martha put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Want me to tell you something? My sister had the same problem with her children. They lived off her, treated her like an employee, spent her pension. Do you know what she did?" "What?" I asked hopefully. "She set boundaries. She told them, 'You visit me when I invite you, for the time I decide, and you contribute to the expenses. If you don't like it, find a hotel.' At first, there was drama, shouting, emotional blackmail, but then they realized she was serious, and it worked. Of course, now they visit her occasionally, always bring something, always help, and treat her with respect, because they learned that a mother's affection isn't free when they confuse it with exploitation." When we returned to the living room with the coffee, the family had been murmuring among themselves. I could see that they had reached some kind of consensus. David cleared his throat. "Mary, we've been talking, and we think maybe we could contribute something to the expenses. Not the exaggerated amounts you propose, but something reasonable." "How much do you consider reasonable?" I asked. $200 for the entire stay for all of us," Rebecca said. Martha almost choked on her coffee. $200 for 20 people for 2 weeks? Children, the cheapest hotel in town, charges $60 per night per room. The math was relentless, and they knew it, but I had already made my decision. $200, I repeated slowly, as if considering the offer. I saw them all with anticipation in their faces, thinking they had found a way to get their way once more. For 20 people for 14 days with 3 meals a day, lodging, water, electricity, gas, laundry, and cleaning. "Exactly," Rebecca said with a triumphant smile. "See, we're reasonable. We want to contribute." Martha looked at me with that expression only wise women have when something good is about to happen. She had perfectly understood what was going on. "Okay," I finally told them. "I accept your proposal." Everyone sighed with relief. They thought they had won, but I continued, and I watched as their faces hardened. "With one condition. Since this is now a commercial transaction, I want you to sign a lodging contract." "A contract?" Noah asked suspiciously. "Of course, if you're going to pay for services, we need to clearly establish what those services include and what they don't. It's to protect everyone." I took out the papers Jeremy had prepared and placed them on the coffee table. "This contract specifies that for $200, you are entitled to sleep on the living room floor, 1 basic meal a day, rice and beans, access to the bathroom during specific hours, and nothing else." "1 meal a day!" Emily shouted. "But we expected 3 meals." Of course you can have 3 meals a day, I replied sweetly. But that's in the premium package, which costs the $2,800 I originally mentioned. This is absurd, David exploded. You're crazy if you think we're going to sign that. You don't have to sign it, I told them with perfect calm. You can find lodging elsewhere. In fact, I think that would be best for everyone. Mom, Rebecca shouted, you can't kick us out. We're your family. I'm not kicking you out, I replied. I'm giving you options. You can pay the commercial rates for the services you want, you can pay for the basic services you can afford, or you can find alternatives that better fit your budget. Martha slowly applauded. Bravo! That's exactly what my sister needed to do. Clear options, fair terms, no emotional blackmail. You stay out of this, Rebecca shouted at Martha. This is a family matter. You're right, Martha replied, standing up. It is a family matter, and a good family doesn't treat its elders like that. She headed for the door, but before leaving, she turned to me. Mary, if you need anything at all, you know where I live. And if these people cause you problems, don't hesitate to call me. Here in town, neighbors look out for each other. After Martha left, the living room fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to find a new strategy. Paul tried the guilt approach. Mary, your husband and I were very close. He considered me like a brother. Do you think he would like to see you treating his in-laws like this? My husband, I replied, taught me to value myself. He taught me that true love is shown through actions, not words. And he taught me that allowing others to abuse you isn't love, it's cowardice. Robert tried intimidation. Mary, I don't think you realize the situation you're getting yourself into. There are many of us, and you're alone. It's not smart to make enemies of the family. His words would have terrified me before, but now they only confirmed what I already knew. These people didn't love me. They needed me, and when they couldn't use my love, they resorted to fear. Are you threatening me in my own home? I asked, with a calm that surprised me. It's not a threat, he replied quickly. I'm just being realistic. The reality, I said, is that you came to my house uninvited, expecting free services you can't afford. The reality is that when I asked you to contribute equally, you refused. And the reality is that now that I offer you fair options, you resort to threats and intimidation. Emily began to cry. It was a dramatic cry designed to manipulate. I can't believe how cruel you've become, Mary. My baby needs stability, and you're throwing us out into the street. Your baby, I replied, needs parents who can afford his basic needs without relying on exploiting an elderly woman. If you can't afford a vacation, maybe you shouldn't take one. The children who had been playing in the garden ran in. Grandma, why is everyone shouting? The youngest asked. My heart broke a little. The children were innocent in all this, but their parents were using them as emotional shields. The adults are having a serious conversation, I replied gently. Why don't you go play outside for a little longer? But we're hungry, one of the twins said. Is the food ready? I looked at all the adults in the living room. None moved to take care of their own hungry children. They expected me to do it, as always. Parents, I said, your children are hungry. In the kitchen, there's rice and beans that you can prepare for them. You're not going to cook? Noah asked incredulously. I cooked yesterday and the day before. Today, you can cook, I replied. But we don't know how to cook, Emily protested. Then maybe it's time to learn, I replied. Or you can take the children to eat in town. There are several restaurants. David stood up abruptly. This is the last straw. Rebecca, pack our things. We're leaving right now. Where? Rebecca asked in a panic. We don't have reservations anywhere. We'll find something. Anything is better than being here with this version of your mother. I stayed seated, watching them run back and forth, hastily packing their things. Part of me felt sad watching the chaos, but a larger part felt relieved. Mom, Rebecca said to me when they had everything packed, this isn't you. I don't know what's happened to you, but I hope you reflect on what you've done today. You've destroyed your family for money. No, I replied, standing up to look her directly in the eyes. "I have found my dignity and learned the difference between family who loves me and people who use me." "You'll regret this," she shouted as she left. "When you're alone and sick, don't come asking us for help." "I prefer to be alone with dignity than accompanied without respect," I replied. One by one, they got into their cars. This time, there were no tears from the children because they had understood that this visit was different. This time, there were no shouts or dramatic protests, only the resignation of people who had lost their favorite victim. I watched them drive away for the second and last time and felt something I hadn't felt in years: complete peace. That night, Martha came to dinner. She had made chicken stew, and I had prepared rice with pigeon peas. We ate on my porch, watching the sunset over the fields, talking about our garden plans. "Do you feel good about your decision?" she asked me. "I feel free," I replied for the first time in years. "I feel free." 6 months later, my house had truly become my home. My garden flourished, I had a small network of friends in town, and I had started taking painting classes at the community center. My days were filled with activities I chose to do, not ones I was forced to do. Rebecca called me occasionally whenever she needed something: money borrowed, babysitting, solving a problem. I listened patiently and then told her, "I'm sorry, my love, but I can't help you with that." At first, she would get angry. Then she would beg. Then she would threaten. Now, she simply hangs up. I have learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to hurt you. I have learned that being generous doesn't mean exhausting yourself for others. I have learned that true family takes care of you as much as you take care of them. And I have learned something even more important. It's never too late to reclaim your life, your dignity, and your right to be happy. This morning, I woke up to the sound of birds singing, brewed my coffee in my clean and tidy kitchen, and went out to water my plants, which are growing beautiful and strong, just like me. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story. If you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video, and subscribe to my channel. There are many more waiting for you. Big hugs, and see you next time.